All right. Let me start by just talking to you about how the Serious Games Association looks at the serious games industry right now. And as you know, we are a young association, so I look forward to your thoughts. And as we expand as an industry, I'm sure we will change and expand our thinking. But there are opportunities, there are challenges, and I'm going to speak to trends in the business. First of all, we look at serious games right now as 5 big market segments. Education, for instance, is both formal education and at-home learning, so I'm sure at some point we will split that segment. But corporate or serious games that are used within companies, then the medical and healthcare, which again represents both the professional side and products that are prepared for the consumer about healthcare. Government and military could be split. And finally, a nonprofit or consumer-oriented group. As I said, I think this is how we're gathering and looking at the organization right now, the industry right now. And I'll talk briefly about each market and then go into some of the trends that we see. These would be opportunity markets for you. The preschool games, K through 12, I don't know if you use that term over here, but for us it's roughly age 5 to 18, all of the grade school and high school years. Higher education, colleges, and MBA programs, MBA where there is a lot of activity going on in serious games. A very small and unknown area is the trade and professional schools. I'm hearing about serious games being developed for nursing training, for driver's ed education, for other kinds of professional uses, and testing. One of the largest test organizations for entering college students is changing some of their program for training and preparation for exams into games. That's a very interesting development. And then, of course, at-home learning, where at least in the United States, and I'm sure worldwide, parents are very concerned that their children keep up the pace with the skill set that they need to develop through life, and games are fulfilling some of that gap. In the corporate market, we have seen games start to be used first for marketing, for helping companies talk about their products to customers and in advertising. Then they moved into entertainment training, where they are managed by the HR, Human Resources Department, and are being used very extensively now for leadership training. Business process analysis, which started out as a serious games, has evolved into a whole category of serious games. And those companies that have gotten started previously are now offering products that they develop for their internal use or directly for their customer for sale to other companies to use. And they're doing consulting. In the government and military space, which is where really serious games got started, where there was, like so many things in the United States, NASA and other government organizations began using serious games, and the contractors like Boeing and other primes started supporting it. This was the original use and still active and expanding. Now they are using it for government training on both the national and local level. They are expanding it into government services. We had a speaker at our conference in August from the Centers for Disease Control who talked about how they were developing games to teach consumers about addressing health concerns and how to find and identify health problems. The national parks are starting to push and engage employees to go and see their beautiful areas through games. And the very beginning I've seen now of civic engagement, that local governments are using games to explain something like a construction project. I don't know if it came all the way over here, but in Los Angeles last weekend they closed north and south of the 405 freeway, which is millions of people moving every day. They called it Carmageddon, and all of us tried to stay home, and I wish they had explained it to us in a serious games as opposed to the flashing lights that we all drove by very quickly in the morning. It was quite a mess. In the medical and healthcare area, games are being used for professional education to explain everything as complicated even as a surgical procedure, for staff training, and for consumer education, diet, health, fitness, for disease symptoms and treatments, and pet and infant care. And as you can see, sometimes these programs cross between large segments, but we are trying to give some organization to them so that we can explain to people who don't know about them the opportunity and the value that we can bring to this field. Finally, we have grouped together those serious games being developed by nonprofit organizations. Not just associations who are using it for professional development and member services, but charities to reach out to potential donors and tell people what you can do with a small amount of money. Political campaigns are using them to promote. I'm sure there'll be games to decide between our presidential candidates before we even get to elections, and we've all heard enough about that already in the U.S. And activist organizations. And actually, when I said this, something about nonprofit in another article for an interview, I was contacted by the head of Games for Change who said there also are commercial products being offered in this sector that you can make money at. Out of these various segments, the kinds of things that are coming are games, what you might characterize as a game, simulations, virtual worlds, online learning platforms, interactive sites, interactive video presentations, all different personifications, which is one of the reasons it makes it hard to decide what to include in this whole big market category. So let's now start looking more at what I see worldwide. There is no that I've been able to find organizations that really gives us the figure of how big an industry we are. One analyst firm came to the Serious Playing Conference and talked about it. His numbers will be smaller than these, but if you add together the various numbers for sectors that people are looking at, you come up with anything like from 2.8 billion to 10 billion. If we can start saying we are a 10 billion, legitimately say we are a 10 billion plus industry, we will begin to get the attention. That's how the video game business, of course, did, by saying that they were as big as and then bigger than movies. Next year, we will undertake a market study, and I would hope that some senior professionals who can help us answer the market in your Asian countries will help and join with us and answer questions so that we can have truly a better handle on just what is the market. But the best numbers that I found were from an analyst that talked about game-based learning and had access to some good numbers. His firm looks at educational products across all of the 5 markets that I described. It does not include any simulations at all, virtual worlds, and it does not include learning devices or anything that you might attribute a PC or other hardware to it. And it also does not include the mobile market or mobile devices. So you can see why I think it's only part of the market. But his figures, and this was from Ambient Insight, which is a Seattle-based consultancy, and if any of you are looking for a consultancy, it's one you might look at. He calls the game-based learning market to be 1.2 billion last year, growing at 15.4% this year and expected to double by 2015. Again, this is just a portion of the market. In the game-based learning, these next few figures tell you some of the implications of this. Last year, China became the largest investor in learning games, followed by Korea, then the US and Japan. And China is developing their own educational games. Before that, they were pulling them from Korea. Now China is a major production head. Latin America has a small percentage of the worldwide spend, but it has the highest growth rate. followed by Eastern Europe and Africa. So it's kind of interesting to see what's happening around the world. North America and Western Europe were early investors in serious games, and they have maintained a steady investment, but they are not growing as fast. Here's a chart that shows that. You can see that Latin America is growing fastest, followed by Eastern Europe. But when you look at the numbers, North America still is making the largest investment after Asia, which is pulling together China and the other. I should have said that way. Asia is making the largest investment, followed by North America, and after that, Western Europe. So I don't know whether you look at some of these developing markets like Latin America as too small to consider, or you think about the fact that they are developing the fastest, and therefore you might go there or develop something for them or work with a partner because there will be more need for you and less people to fill it. Some of the major trends that we are seeing is that the major entertainment game makers are getting on board. American entertainment companies like Activision and EA, maybe not Activision, but EA and Nintendo are beginning to develop epic, serious games. They're kind of looking at it to see if they should be doing something. Augmented reality is not expanding. That was a big thing for a while, but it doesn't seem to be growing. The features that customers want when they come to an analyst firm are, can you do this game for me mobile? Can you make it apply locally? Like if you had something for parents, can it be applied city by city? Does it have social features? These are the three things people seem to be asking for. Location-based education games are emerging. That is like a game that might be at a large museum to explain something. Brain fitness, still hot, still a lot of investment going in there. And we have this new term that's very hot, very trendy, called gamification. It's causing debate, hype, and some useful products, maybe. Mobile is definitely the fastest growing market. Mobile games in the education space are outselling PC, web, and console education games. Last year, mobile games generated revenues of $163 million by themselves and have a faster compounded growth rate. Mobile games will grow at about 17%, whereas non-mobile education games are growing only at 5%. All right, I don't know how this got so big. Well, I think it's a repeat of what you heard, and I can talk to you about it when I can see it in smaller numbers. The use of games for learning has become ubiquitous in the early grades in formal education, but it starts to taper off in terms of the volume of use by grade 7. The exception is for STEM training, where major development is going on. In the United States, we talk about STEM all the time, getting our students to study science, technology, engineering, and math, because we lag behind the emphasis that many of you in Asian countries have put on this. In higher education, it's the business school, the post-college educational groups that are teaching with games and also are learning that their students can be smart enough to develop serious games and resell them or apply them for use in companies that they join. A few examples. Dragon Box is an enormously popular math game at the elementary level. If you can imagine any game that's outselling Angry Birds, then it must be pretty interesting and fun. This fall will be launched in 100 U.S. schools to help elementary school kids with math. And of course, you can buy it for your own children. Speaking of parents, Stickery's Mermaid Waters, which was developed also in northern Scandinavia, is for preschool kids. The animation, the graphics, I should say, are just adorable. And it has become the #1 iPhone game in the education category. Let's move from the education market to talk a little bit about the corporate market. As I mentioned before, serious games are being actively used to promote products to customers in advertising. They're replacing old training methods. And games have actually become a profit center for those cutting-edge companies that have gotten into games early. Gamification here is a hot trend. The current market for gamification is $380 million, which covers corporate and other categories. But again, one number I was able to obtain that is only part of the big picture. In my personal opinion, I expect that advertising agencies will continue to develop games or advertising that includes gamification techniques for a few more years, and then it will die due to the fact that consumers are very fickle about advertising. They want something new. But it is right now a huge trend in the United States. In the corporate market, games are also being used to introduce consumers to new products. IBM launched its business process software with a game, and beyond that, the software has moved out and out into other applications. The reason companies are finding that corporate training using games are effective is because they let managers experience situations which are impossible to create in the real world. They allow managers to see how choices they make might impact results. You can take risks. Employees within a corporate structure worried about their jobs don't often take risks. So if they can play by doing them, if they can see what would happen if they sold a division and got rid of the losing division, how would that impact the bottom line profit structure of a company, for instance? They can learn from this. They also believe that games are helping teach teamwork, which is a concept that is very big in the business schools, and people worry about it. Employees who think they can do it all themselves are not as successful as employees who work together on a team. And I've also seen corporate games that are used to teach emergency and safety procedures to employees. There's one game that's being used in Western Europe to train blue-collar workers or about safety procedures around electrical outlets, water, fire. IBM, which I would consider one of the leadership companies in the United States around serious games, like I said, used first a game to promote their business process software. They believe that companies can use this same business process software to analyze and improve any aspect of any business. So they're showing the various ways that it can be applied. And at our conference in August, an IBM employee said, I would like to see local governments use this kind of, use a serious game to vet public policy. For instance, if they are going to do a major construction or renovation in the city, they can help employees learn about it, and they even suggested that they could start by putting this game out there and having employees answer questions and give input that would make the whole process become easier. There's a subway going on in the street in front of my hotel. If a game were used to show people how to deal with this, it might make the citizenry more sympathetic and have them have an easier time with that whole construction process. In the corporate market, there is definitely evolution. Companies early in are looking at consulting opportunities. IBM is working with DARPA and the Department of Defense and earning government contracts when that was not even a market they were looking at before, but they were called in because of their early success. And as I said, they're also selling the business process software for evaluation of any product. And you know how they did it? They developed it first to help people understand the software. They gave it free to 1,000 MBA programs. The students learned it, and as the students graduated and went to companies, they encouraged the companies to buy this software. Here are some other trends. Collaboration games. Last year, the University of Washington in Seattle produced a game called Fold It. How many of you heard of Fold It? Well, it's a very interesting game, and if you have not, I suggest you write down the website here, because in 10 days, it invited everyone to jump in and see if they could address a biological science program. And they solved something that scientists had been working on for 15 years. It had write-ups all over the country. And the government, in this case, followed what Seattle had done. They are developing drones to find submarines, because we live in a water-surrounded country, or at least on our east and west coast. We're always worried about submarines coming in and looking at us. So they have released a simulator product hoping that crowdsource, and I don't know if you know this term, but crowdsource is inviting everybody in to see what they think about something. And they're hoping that this will result in some artificial intelligence ideas that will be needed to test these drones. Imagine what the next-gen city simulation could be like with everyone contributing ideas. I mentioned this gamification thing because people have understood that games engage people and make them want to do something. They are bolting on gamification mechanics to legacy content. There's a couple of examples here. Course Hero. And also at Oxford University, the Secret Builder game platform. A couple of things you might want to look at. And as I mentioned, big game brands are jumping in. Nintendo has developed dozens of education games for Wii, and parents love letting their kids do it. And they also have fitness programs and all kinds of things that are really serious in nature, have a serious reason for existing. Microsoft recently announced partnerships with Sesame Street and National Geographic. And the Institute of Play, Katie Salen, famous for wanting schools to use games, Electronic Arts, and the Entertainment Software Association, which previously had expressed no interest in anything but entertainment games, have formed a glass lab, a development lab focused on making low-cost education games under their foundation. The leaders in the market are reaching out and forming partnerships with other companies that want to get into games. Again, the Nordic area companies are quite active. A Swedish company that developed Minecraft is partnering with US and other Finnish developers to launch another game that will be even better. And major publishers are jumping in. Pearson launched a gamified learning platform called Alley-Oop this spring. It is built around some of the things you know about entertainment games: missions, achievements, a virtual currency, and 4 months later announced content partnerships with NASA, National Geographic, the National Science Foundation, and all of these other companies. They're moving ahead. Download platforms are jumping in. Valve, which most of us know for entertainment game, has launched a free Teach with Portals classroom initiative. And they've released a rapid authoring tool to help developers. I don't know if you care about investment, but I think it's a good way to look at what the people with money, what the guys with money in the US think is important, think is going to be hot. So I'll review that quickly. Dreambox obtained $11 million in December of last year. In August, Class Dojo, which had a gamified classroom management program, got $1.6 million. $1.6 million is not very much money, but it's the beginning of that flow from the Silicon Valley. And 3.5 million teachers and students are now using that Dojo platform. Lumis Labs, or Luminicity developer that has been focused on brain training and brain fitness, especially for older adults, but of course there's always an interest in parents for children to have brain training, raised $32 million in 2011 and came back and matched that with another $32 million just weeks ago. So these are the largest single investments. The first one was the largest single investment. Together, that $70 million is more than investment in all the other companies that we could find. In higher education, you are also seeing companies get some money, but I'm not sure in this case whether Scavenger got the money for their higher education market or for their location-based game market, which is for museums and other places that want games. But now that funding in 2011, which was $1 to $3 million, look at this, 10 times that amount going into the companies in the United States. How is that money won? Well, usually investment comes after the successful launch of a product with proven learning. Lumis Labs' Luminicity Brain Trainer is the second highest grossing application in the United States. So a year later, they doubled their investment. All of the examples so far in the VC market are for education, but it is happening in other places. Here in the healthcare market, much of the funding has been funded by medical institutions, but we haven't heard anything from insurance companies. I think that will happen. However, HealthTap, which released a program just about communication with doctors and patients. I mean, after all, how many of us think our doctors have bedside manners? And how many of their assistants are really helping them put all of that information into the computer when you go in for an appointment? They raised $11 million last year. And also, another company called Rally On in the corporate market got a small amount of money. Most of the money in the corporate market, of course, is funded by the IBMs, the Ciscos, and the other companies. But consultants are making money in the corporate market. English as a second language is another hot area. Now, this is a question we always get asked, and I go to Ambient Insight's research again. There is a huge variation based on sector and sales model. So you have to look at this when you decide what area of serious games you want to be involved in. If you're doing something from the classroom, at least in the United States, don't expect to earn more than about $100 per classroom use and have it based more on that group buy. In the healthcare area, there also are subscription sales, and an individual product can raise between $5,000 and $10,000. The corporate investment is all over the place. It might be $30,000 in the United States for just an application, or it might be a $500,000 investment in a simulation to train a surgeon for something. The average is $65,000. And by the way, if any of you want a copy of these slides, if you join the association, it'll be available free to you, as will all of our research. In the government, fixed grants usually start with about a $100,000 investment. But if the government likes it and you are improving it, at least in the U.S., the grant can be as much as $750,000 for your help. What are the key inhibitors holding us back? First of all, just awareness. A lot of you are nodding with me, and you are in the industry, but for some of you, some of this news is new. So for all of those people out there that have not heard about what we're doing, we have to raise awareness. And that's public relations. My original background will be used to promote anything I can learn about it. I would love to have your games be examples in the next speeches that I give. The economy, of course, worldwide has put somewhat of a damper on it in the last 5 years, but there is beginning, for instance, to be some new spend. In the corporate market, where the economy in 2008 squashed all investment in training, 5 years later, a lot of human resource consultants are saying, scrap that old, outdated training and invest in serious games. So the new spend in training in corporations very heavily is in games. Of course, there just is that inertia, that hesitance to trying new things. We will have to get past that and encourage people. And of course, I think bubbling up are our kids, the students, helping those of us with some gray hair to understand that this is where the world is going. We also need published documentation of learning outcomes, more than anything else. If any of you can help me with this, we will publish this for any member of the association to have and use. I've just been offered some by the University of Minnesota. I'm going to be getting that and publishing it. If any of you have any documentation, please let me know. And in particular, they don't want just something say, oh, this worked really well. They want to know how it worked in comparison to something else that had been done before, so that they can tell the difference, as opposed to kids just getting excited about participating in something new. Now, there are a lot of business models, and I'm having to go through this, of course, very quickly. Subscription-based models and advertising are the most common now, but sponsorships have begun to prove to be viable business model. Yville started out as a subscription model and then went to sponsorship, and they say they are being successful. We will investigate more of this. In the mobile business market, freemium is becoming the prevalent business model. You're probably all sure with this. Give the game free to the customer and then offer them things that they can buy, sell parts of the exposure to sponsors. And here are some of the others. I'm conscious of some time, so I'm going to move more quickly. Alternate models, maybe partner with a personal learning device maker. Then that device comes preloaded with educational content. And we're seeing that in Asia quite a bit, especially in India. And then there is an explosion of these devices. On average, 5 to 6 new mobile learning products in this category are being launched every month, most of them in developing economies where the per-person purchase is low, must be low to succeed. Some games you might want to check out to see what's happening in the marketplace. Dragon Box, which was a gold medal winner. It helps kids learn algebra, makes it fun, and parents can participate. And it's available in English, French, Norwegian, Spanish, and Swedish. This is an interesting game, we thought, developed by a public service television station in the United States in the South to try to teach the history of slavery and what it was really like to live in the United States. I mean, we, of course, are under this huge movement to continue to diversify. We're not as integrated, diverse environment as Singapore. But it's a very interesting game where kids play along, and find out what it was like to live in this world and how difficult it was even when slaves became free. This is a business application, and it actually was developed by a Hungarian developer. It teaches a leadership method. Guts and Bolts by Brain Pop. It helps students understand the complex relationships about the circulatory, respiratory, and digestive systems in the human body. And this game, you might be interested, was developed by MIT Game Lab over here. So it shows that students are helping innovate as well. The students were looking at, do you have to develop a game by traditional methods, or can you use other criteria? So for us, it won a gold medal because of its innovation. And virtual worlds, here's an interesting one. Club One Island, which has helped people diet and lose weight, and they have discovered that it really is effective, and that people on it really did lose considerable amount of weight. There are 6 ingredients to a good serious games: mechanics, rules, immersive graphics, interactivity, communications, challenge, and risks. And Ann Derryberry, with whom I credit this way back in 2007, should have mentioned measurement. You must have that today. Thank you very much. I look forward to talking to all of you later.